Good evening and welcome to Face the Nation. I'm Fundo Mabalani, standing in for Clement Manyatela this evening. It's great to have you with us on the SABC. So on the show tonight, we'll be joined by Gauteng Finance Lebogang Maile. He held a media briefing today to address reports that Gauteng is on the verge of bankruptcy. He says there's no such. He'll share the exact state of affairs with us tonight. And a bit later on, we'll speak to Land Reform and Rural Development Minister Mzwanele Nyhontso, who has accused King Misuzulu kaZwelithini of acting beyond his powers, in fact, overreaching into what is considered to be his purview by suspending members of the Ingonyama Trust. The minister says the power rests with him. We'll also speak to Joburg Mayor Morero on last week's Johannesburg High Court ruling that the allocation of 8 bodyguards for a mayor, among others, is unconstitutional and unlawful. We spoke to the DA last week. The mayor will today react to that judgment and share the next step for council on the specific matter. But first, my comment. Now, reports of Gauteng, the economic hub, being in a precarious financial position would raise the eye of many. So citizens have been justifiably concerned. The minister taking the opportunity to address this issue is commendable, which indicates how worrying the situation would be, or at least that he would regard the concerns of citizens. But this is a long-standing issue of the finances not being in good shape. It doesn't help that the MEC himself is giving mixed messages. Today, he communicated a message that the finances are fine, but on the 26th of September 2024, he confirmed that the province is in a very precarious financial position, which could deteriorate rapidly if the provincial government is not careful. So what could all of this mean? Are these mixed messages? At least we'll have him tonight to clarify. But it leads us to our question tonight. The question we're asking is, Gauteng Finance MEC Lebogang Maile says the province's budget of 169 billion is substantial and efforts are underway to improve spending efficiency. What do you make of Maile's statement that the province is not on the brink of bankruptcy? Let us know your thoughts. You can send your WhatsApp or voice notes on 078-459-1897. Remember to tell us your name and surname and where you're sending your voice note from, and please keep it at 30 seconds, or send us an X on Facebook, or rather at Face the Nation SABC. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. The Gauteng provincial government has refuted media reports claiming that the province is on the brink of bankruptcy, while the provincial government concedes the commitment to repay the e-toll debt has dealt a blow to its finances. It says a host of reforms will be implemented to meet budgetary obligations. Gauteng MEC for Finance Lebogang Maile says the province still has close to 54 billion available to spend until the end of March this year. He joins me in studio to discuss this further. MEC, good evening. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Evening, and thanks for having us.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. So today you saw it fit to address these reports that the Gauteng province is on the brink of bankruptcy. And at the media briefing, you took the media through the current state of the finances. Let's start with the overall spending to date, because if we look at the 169 billion as the budget, where exactly do we stand?
Well, firstly, let me start by saying compliments to you and the viewers at home. And I would like to wish you a happy, peaceful, healthy and prosperous new year. And I wish the same to the viewers at home.
Thank you.
But secondly, it will be befitting to convey our heartfelt condolences to
the Khumalo family.
The Khumalo family. And having said that, because she was, I think, one of the shining stars who has touched our lives and who has made a huge impact in the industry. So we would like to convey our condolences. We are sitting just over 68%, I think, in terms of the actual spending, just above 105 billion or so, because our budget was adjusted upwards in November from 163 billion to
the 169.
169, yes. And then there was rollovers. I think that's what is important. The only new money we added was 2.1 billion. The rest of the money was shifting of funds from Department X to Z and departments amongst themselves, but also the rollovers, meaning the money that was appropriated in the previous year. It was not necessarily spent, but it was committed, and the departments had to apply for permission for the money to be rolled over. And that those monies have been rolled over.
And that roughly stands now at 54 billion. What is left over now between...
The 54 billion is what is left of the 169 billion.
Yeah, and this must sustain the government until March next year.
It will, because you will remember that the budget is a legislated process, meaning that there's a process that's undertaken, and after that process we go to the Gauteng legislature to vote for the budget. And the budget is also based on what we call annual performance plans. So every plan is budgeted for. So there is no money that is appropriated without any budget, a plan being put in place. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is that the law requires that, meaning the PFMA requires that every quarter you must spend a certain percentage of your budget. In this case, it's about 25% per quarter. We are now in the last quarter. By the end of the third quarter, I think we had already spent close to 68%. So by now we should have spent about 75%. So there's no way that we can be bankrupt when in fact we are like 6-7% behind in terms of spending.
So you can give that assurance, because I mean the amount of 53 billion is a huge amount, but the spending priorities of Gauteng are also huge. So context is key in this regard, that if we're talking billions, for somebody else, the context or the detail would clarify if 53 billion can actually sustain us up until March. And you're giving the assurance that indeed it will.
That's why I'm trying to simplify that by end of December, we should be sitting at 75%. We are sitting at 68%. So there is no way that you will overspend, one. But there's no way that you are short of money. And that's why what we are concentrating on is how do we make sure that we spend the remainder of the money, which we are confident that we will spend within the law and in a transparent way, in an accountable way, and there must be value for money. I think that's what is important. I'm sure the public wants us to spend the money, but they also want to see value for money, and they also want us to be accountable and to be transparent.
But I actually will touch a bit later on the infrastructure spend, because you have been struggling in that respect, and you've conceded such. But I want to take you to the 26th of September last year. You communicated a completely different message to the one that you communicated today, that the finances are well. On the 26th, you raised quite a lot of alarm because you indicated that the finances of the province were in a precarious position. And that if there's no change, there's going to be a very difficult situation that the province finds itself in. What has changed now? Because for some, that would be quite confusing.
Yeah, look, I said, like we've always cautioned, and even the Minister of Finance has cautioned, that the economy is not doing well. Our financial situation, it's not where we want it to be. In fact, in the next 5 years, our budget is less with close to 50 billion rands. It's less. So that's not small money. That's the first thing. But the second thing is that as the budget is reduced, the demands are increasing. Every year we have at least 230,000 people coming to Gauteng. As I speak to you, schools are opening next week. We will have at least 50,000 more kids, and there has to be money. So all that we're saying is that we need to be always careful in how we spend, and we must not be reckless, because if we become reckless, things will get out of hand. And that does not mean we will be bankrupt. And that's why we said, post that, because we were answering that's why context is important.
Yeah.
When someone was talking about e-tolls and we're answering, and then the answer was blown out of proportion. And people said, I said we will be bankrupt. No, we will not be bankrupt. There is no way that we will be bankrupt if you look at
But
how...
if we look at specifically the health department as well as the education department, they take a substantial amount of the budget. And when it comes to health, you again have been the first one to raise concerns, whether it be overspending, non-compliance, the inability to pay any of the invoices within 30 days, all of the claims. There's also several other issues when it comes to the health department.
Yes, both health and education. And in fact, the Department of Health, some of the issues that were raised in that press conference, it's issues that were raised by the AG and all that. But there are, and I've explained that there's objective and the subjective factors that affects both these big departments. One of the objective factors that affects them is the large numbers, as I've said, that comes into the province. Our health system is overburdened because you've got people who come as far as neighboring countries, by the way, not just neighboring provinces. We've said previously that the baseline of the Department of Health, it's not accurate because of these numbers, and because there's always less resources, we always catch up. And that's why the Department of Health every year has got accruals, and you have to start with those
pardon me for interjecting there just in the interest of time, but that argument around urbanization is an age-old argument. It either speaks to a lack of preparation for such numbers, or it could legitimately be an issue that you're still seized with and will address at a later time. But the one about overspending, at least when it comes to being overcharged, those are problems that have to do with non-compliance with procurement processes.
Yeah, no. The Department of Health is not an overspend. No, it is no overspend. In fact, I think they've not spent, they've underspent slightly last year. But the issue of urbanization in migration, it's not a small matter. It's not an excuse. That's why I'm saying it's an issue that is far beyond us as a province. And we are trying our level best with the resources at our disposal. That's why I started by explaining to you that our budget will be less by about 50 billion in the next 5 years. So it's not a small matter. It means we have got less 50 billion to spend.
But you have been the MEC that came out and confidently said we're trying new innovative ways, there'll be reforms to raise the funds, because you're getting your funds from three places. It's the equitable share, it's your conditional grants, and it's your revenue. But you confidently said that when it comes to revenue, we've got great innovative ways that we're going to raise more revenue.
No, definitely. That's what we're doing. But going out to raise more revenue doesn't mean you have not lost money. The reason why you must actually accelerate the process of raising revenue is because you have lost, you are bleeding. And anyway, you have no choice, because if you don't raise extra revenue, it means you might not be able to do many other things that you're supposed to do. So revenue enhancement is key. It's what we're going to do. We are focusing on, and that's why in our next budget speech we will deal with that in detail. But you must firstly understand the nature of the problem before you decide how you want to deal with it. So as I'm explaining to you now, we understand that one of the problems is that we are losing a lot of money because of a whole range of reasons, including the payment on Gauteng, including the accruals, including the cut on our revenue share, including an overstatement at some point. I think it was in one of the years. about an overstatement of our population, and as a result, we have to lose all that money. So it's not us saying we don't want the money.
Yeah.
It's objective factors that are beyond us, and hence we don't have money now in our disposal. However, we are looking at other ways of raising
We'll
money.
touch on those ways, and I also want you to tell us at least the impact that the debt that you're currently servicing of e-tolls, how much of an impact that has been to the budget. But I want us to recap our question that we're asking this evening. We're asking tonight that Gauteng Finance MEC Maile says the province's budget of 169 billion is substantial and efforts are underway to improve spending efficiency. What do you make of this statement that the province is not on the brink of bankruptcy? A number of you have already commented. Let's look at some of those comments on social media, and since we have the MEC here to address some of those. Tabi Sombata says, Maile's statement highlights Gauteng's substantial 169 billion budget, but emphasizes the need for improved spending efficiency. The effectiveness of the budget will depend on how well funds are managed and used to address the province's socio-economic challenges. So basically, Tabiso MEC is reiterating what you stated today, that the impact will be felt if you're going to spend this 169 efficiently. Your views on this?
No, we have no choice. We must spend the money efficiently and within the law. Remember, the law requires us to be transparent, to be accountable, to ensure that there is efficiency, to ensure that there is competitiveness, and that there is value for money. So we are guided by the law.
So meaning your spending priorities have to be carefully considered, specifically if we're going to speak about infrastructure spend, because we've heard from the finance minister that this is the era of infrastructure, that if we're going to grow this economy, beyond other factors, it's going to take at least a greater investment on infrastructure. So I want us to touch on that, but it seems we have another tweet just before that.
Yes.
Diapoject 2 says improvement on spending efficiency is very important, or very paramount, important for Gauteng administration. They must enforce it by all means so that specific money should be spent directly where it's supposed to, and it will also enforce accountability. Your views on that statement?
It's absolutely correct.
It's correct.
We must be accountable.
So it brings us to the infrastructure one.
Yeah.
Why have you struggled with infrastructure spend?
The infrastructure budget this year, it's about 12 billion. No, 13 billion in this financial year. There are different reasons why different departments might not have been able to spend on time. I'm saying on time because they ultimately spend the infrastructure. And it's a very important topic that I think you must probe further. Because if you take, I was once an MEC for human settlement, for instance. And when I got there, there were houses, for instance, that were built and finished previously. But because of lack of coordination and communication between a municipality and the department, some of those houses did not have water connection. And if it does not have water connection, a house can't be considered as complete. So you might have built brick and mortar and all that, but there must be water, there must be electricity, and there must be certain amenities. I'm just giving you an example.
Which is a problem when you have these tiers of government working in silos.
Exactly. So that's why I started by saying when I arrived.
Yeah.
But when we got there, one of the things we said we must do, there must be no new house built without all these important amenities being there. But the second thing, I want to give you an example. There's a road, I forget, in Tshwane. The Department of Transport has got the money to build the roads. But there's informal settlements built in the middle of that road. So they cannot build, but they have been given the money, I think, in the 2 or 3 previous financial years. So obviously, if you can't remove those people, and we can talk about the informal settlements and other issues as well, if you can't remove those people, you can't build a road. So I'm giving you another practical example. So in essence, what I'm saying, there are different reasons why sometimes infrastructure money is not spent. And it doesn't mean, because you'll ask, why then do you allocate that money if there's an informal settlement there?
To begin with.
But you find that, no, the municipality, and at the time the municipality was another party, had agreed that no, we'll remove these people, or a Department X had agreed. So some of these other political dynamics have a huge impact on service delivery, especially on infrastructure. But there are instances where we fail to spend infrastructure money because certain people are not doing their work. Because I don't want to sound like there is no problem. Yes, there is no problem on the part of government. There are instances where people don't do their work, they don't plan on time. Sometimes the approvals, there's a clinic that has been built, I think even now in Mzwanele. It's complete, it's a clinic, and perhaps you can check if they've attended to it, where the city of Mzwanele has refused to provide water a connection to that clinic. The clinic will not be open.
That's quite concerning.
And remember, the Gauteng government's responsibility is to build a clinic, is not to provide water and all that. Because
and the unfortunate part, pardon me again for interjecting, when you have these situations where you've got community members that see that the clinic is complete, but somehow they're not able to be serviced, they don't understand these conversations around the tiers of government, that national government must do this aspect, the province must do this, and the municipality must do this. They entrust you to ensure that they have services as government.
No,
when they see officials, they see government in its entirety. So the whole tiers, for them, if you break that down, they don't care. They just want services.
It's true.
But just in the interest of time, MEC, let's talk about e-tolls and the impact that this continues to have on the budget. Because when you first had to pay the first installment of 3.8 billion, a number of community members were quite saddened by the fact that it's 3.8 billion. It's a large chunk that could be going or reallocated for services. And many had been questioning for the longest time that good and well, e-tolls has been done away with, but how are we going to fund this? How are we going to service this debt?
The e-tolls is these roads that me and you use. Yes. There's money that has been spent to build them. So someone has to pay for it. And government had to go and borrow money a few years back. And the public citizens said, no, we don't want the e-tolling system. And therefore, we don't want to pay. And government considered and said, we'll have to find the money and pay for it. So it's not like we're just putting money down the drain. We are financing this infrastructure that you see. And in fact, a bigger discussion we must have is the user pay principle, because the e-tolls is actually part of what we call the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Scheme, which had 3 phases. This phase called e-toll is the first phase. There's a second and a third phase that must be funded. There are studies that says in the next few years, in a near distant future, if we don't do anything about our roads, we don't expand them, we don't build more, they will be gridlocked. Me and you will struggle to come to work. It's a real discussion that we must have.
We're already struggling to a certain extent right now.
Exactly. So imagine 3 years, 4 years from now, if we don't do anything about that, the situation is going to get worse. And sometimes we need to have honest discussions as citizens. We might say, no, we don't want you to build roads, but 5 years from now, people will be saying, why didn't you build roads? You were sleeping
and I suppose
on the
the honesty or transparency is not something that people are against, but it's just that it came a bit late, because consistently, beyond the celebration that e-tolls were done away with, many were asking, even Outers Wayne Duvenich had asked, how are we going to find this? How are we going to fund this? We've done away with them, how will we pay? But at least now we know we're paying, we've paid the first installment. Please do indulge us. I want to take you now off this government official role, and just in the interest of time, to just get something from you, if you can just wear your political hat. you have tweeted, and there was a specific tweet 2 days ago, where you stated that you would not forgive individuals that would have intentionally destroyed the ANC. The ANC is all you know. It cannot be turned into a cult, and that you will fight. Who were you referring to that has destroyed the ANC?
Don't drag me into the ANC, because you see, when I came here, I came in my capacity as an MEC. Not that I have issues or problems of talking about the ANC, but I know where to talk about it. You know, when you are on the social platforms or on the traditional media platforms, and certain things are said about political issues, whether the ANC or any other issue, you respond to those issues. But I can assure you that I will never raise ANC issues, internal battles, in public, or even respond to any member of the ANC.
But you raised it on a public platform. And you did actually issue a disclaimer and said those that must answer must be ANC members.
Yes, you are
Fair
right.
enough.
Yeah.
But then some would argue that it's not just ANC members or card-carrying members of the ANC that vote for the ANC.
And who love the ANC.
Yes,
Yeah.
so there would be those that would be concerned if the National Democratic Revolution could possibly be compromised. So they would have an interest in that tweet. They would say, if we're hearing Lebogang Maile speaking of an ANC that has been intentionally destroyed, we also have an interest. We voted for the party. It was stated on a public platform.
No. People responded, even those who were not ANC members, which is fine. And there's been specific, what I'll call commentators and analysts and even ordinary members of society who were engaging with us constantly and who continue to engage with us on a whole range of issues, including this one. But I would not want us to create an impression that there's a crisis. ANC has got a constitution, there's a code of conduct, it has got a leadership, it has got structures, and if there are issues that people would like to raise, specifically about internal issues, we are able to do that freely in the ANC. So you don't have to doubt the democratic nature of the ANC. It's a very democratic organization.
All right. I see you will not be answering that question, but thank you very much, nevertheless, for indulging us. Thank you for coming on the program.
I will tweet it. There's a need and a follow-up.
You'll tweet it. We'll tweet it and then we'll invite you again to try and address it.
No problem.
All right. MEC, thank you very much for joining us. That was MEC Lebogang Maile speaking to us. All right. More interviews after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, security has been increased at the Ingonyama Trust head office in Pietermaritzburg due to confusion over management. Last year, Zulu King Misuzulu kaZwelithini suspended Ingonyama Trust CEO, CFO, and 6 board members pending an investigation into alleged misconduct. However, Land Reform Minister Mzwanele Nyhontso nullified the King's decision, stating he alone has the authority to suspend the board and that any appointments must come from the board itself. The Minister joins us this evening. Good evening, Minister. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, you have not beaten about the bush on this matter, on the suspension of some of the board members. I actually read through your statement on the suspension of those members. You say the King acted ultra vires, that authority to take such a decision lies with you and you alone. Just talk us through this.
Evening to you, Mfundo, and evening to the viewers. Yes, you are right. When it comes to matters of law, we can't beat about the bush. We must all subject ourselves to the law. And as the law states that the minister is the only one who has the authority to suspend or dissolve the board or appoint the board, as it is stipulated in the media statement that we've issued. So we had to come in and explain this, and also, of course, we are trying by all means to meet with the king. We are respecting the fact that the king is in the seclusion until the 15th of January. So we're hoping that immediately after the seclusion, we'll be able to meet with the king and explain to him all these matters, because as we have stated in the statement, that should the board decide to take this matter to court, it won't stand the legal scrutiny. And you must also remember, once it is taken to court, the minister is going to be cited. And once we go to court, we'll have to spend taxpayers' money going to court. And after after losing the case, we'll also be paying the costs using taxpayers' money, with something that we should have avoided. So I believe that we will be talking to the king and explaining these matters with him, because anyway, Fundo, we have started this process of understanding the problems of the board and trying to settle them up. Remember, the king and I met, and he raised all the issues were against the board. We also met with the board. We told them the issues that the king raised. Just before the recess in Parliament, I went to the portfolio committee, and I took them into confidence and explained to them the situation with the board. And the board was also present in that meeting.
And what was their response? Pardon me for interjecting there, because the issues are well documented, at least the concerns that the king has had with the board. He has stated that they refused to take instructions from him. So there clearly has been some sort of an issue between the board and the king. So what has been their response to some of these issues?
No, we told them that one of the issues that the king was raising was that the trust has been broken between them and him as the king and also as the chairperson of the board. We even, of course, they are saying no, they still feel that we can mitigate, we can arbitrate, we can negotiate and see that we can't we work together, or can they work together with the king? We wrote to the king and explained to him that this is what the board is saying, because we also gave the board scenarios that you must know, if you are not working with the king, the trust is broken. That means we're not going to have a working board. We're giving you scenarios. You either resign voluntarily or we dissolve you. But they said, no, there must be a third scenario, which is arbitration. We accepted that, okay, we are going to write to the king and tell him that you are prepared for an arbitration. And we wrote to the king. We're still expecting the response from the king. And then there was this letter from these lawyers, who I also believe they were appointed irregular, writing to the board, suspending the board, claiming to be in charge of board matters.
But they were appointed by the king. The king appointed that.
No, they should have been appointed by the board. They are a service provider. There's PFMA here. The board can appoint the service provider, but the problem, they are claiming to have been appointed by the king to suspend the very same board that was supposed to appoint them. So we are just following the law, and this has nothing to do with we respect the king, we accept him as our king, he is our king. But this time, this is the taxpayers' money. The minister must play his part and must do his job and must make sure that he respects the law and respects the constitution. So we'll respectfully explain the matter to the king once he comes out of seclusion after the 15th of January. We've written to him and asked for an audience.
Now, Minister, though according to you, the proper process was not followed by the king, but the trust is a Schedule 3A national public entity in terms of the PFMA, and a forensic investigation here is currently underway, though you also worry about those processes. But that investigation had to deal with allegations of breaches of the PFMA. Where do you stand on just those allegations at this point?
No. We must investigate all wrong allegations. We are not saying the board has not done anything wrong. If there is, we must also do all those investigations. We must do the forensics. We must test the allegations. Remember, some allegations may also be frivolous. So if there are allegations, we must test them. We must make sure that, remember, we are all against corruption. So we are going definitely to go for. That's what I was saying. Anyway, we were trying to sort out all the issues within Ingonyama Trust, but I'm saying we must follow all processes so that we don't flout the law.
All right, Minister, thank you very much for your time this evening. That was Land Reform Minister Mzwanele Nyhontso speaking to us. After the break, we'll be speaking to Mayor Dada Morero. Actually, I understand we don't have a break, we don't have enough time, so we'll swiftly move along to this particular story. The Johannesburg High Court recently declared unlawful the city's council decision to award the mayor 10 bodyguards. The city of Johannesburg has stated that it will not be appealing this ruling. This court judgment has drawn attention to the significant amount of money the city spends on protecting its elected officials. In light of this ruling, will the city continue to offer protection for councillors who feel unsafe? Johannesburg Mayor Dada Morero joins us this evening to discuss this further. Mayor, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Fundo.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. So that judgment now has been overtaken by other events. You have since expressed yourself, reacted, and as council decided that you will not be appealing. The big question now on everybody's mind is, why did it take the courts then? The courts that are under-resourced and at a cost, because you had to brief lawyers to go and defend the decision.
Well, remember, once there's a dispute of interpretation of the law, it has to go to the courts. What happened is that the city of Johannesburg had a protection services since 2016. Before 2016, it only covered the mayor, the speaker, and those are the only people that were covered. And post 2016, when the DA took over, 2 months into the job, they then implemented coverage for all the MMCs. So subsequently, with change of governments in the city, the system was always there. So no one thought it should be reversed or be reviewed.
Just for clarity there, can I just interject?
Yes.
You're saying there was an extension, but I'm looking for the number then, that how many bodyguards per official?
Well, as it stands now, I'm sitting at 6, which is 4 days in, 4 days out. So basically, they're on a shift system. So I've got 3 at any given time that work with me. And after there are 4 days, 3 more come in to work with me, 2 in the main vehicle and 1 in the backup vehicle.
And then the MACO members?
MACO members, it's 1 each. It's actually 2, but because of a shift system, at any given day, they've got 1 official with them.
So the coalition government comes in beyond 2016?
Yes.
When you state that this was not actually something initiated by yourselves, by the Democratic Alliance. You come in, you must regularize this. You must put some sort of framework.
Yes.
So beyond them saying, let there be an extension to MACO members, who came up with the amount, the number of bodyguards?
Well, the Public Safety Department would have made suggestions based on whatever assessments they would have done. And they then brought in a proposed strategy, policy, to help us regularize this thing around the 20th of March, 2023. And we took it to council because we realized that there was no framework that was existing. There was no policy that was existing. We thought then it is important to put a policy just to cover everybody, ensure that council does not found wanting. And over and above that, we then agreed that there's a need for us to notify the South African Police Service so that the threat assessment and risk assessment can be conducted on all MMCs, and they duly complied, filled in the forms, sent to SAPS. As we are waiting for the conclusion of the threat assessment, then the matter went to court, brought by the DA. And
but they said on a number of occasions at council, they had asked, they stated, because we had Belinda last week, and she indicated that they have consistently requested that let that threat assessment be brought to council so that we can at least say that this has been justified, because she was also quite circumspect in just almost dismissing the fact that there probably is a need for the bodyguards. She indicated that all that was needed was a proper justification, and that would come with the SABC's threat analysis. But she said it was not forthcoming, and even now in court, you had the judge indicating that they would give you that reprieve, or at least they would suspend the orders and allow for council to present that threat analysis, and perhaps then they would see that it was a legitimate request to have the number of bodyguards that the officials have.
No. They've given us until the 14th of February to present those things. And I think by today, the Public Safety Department is gone ahead to do a application of all the MMCs once more, and it will be submitted to SABC for them to conduct a threat analysis. But what Belinda fails to tell you is that this is their program. They implemented this thing. Belinda was driven without any form of framework. So it can't be that suddenly Belinda and the DA believes, therefore, that they're in the right. They are not.
But if you're saying
Now,
that in 2016...
Let's put it into context, Fundo. And the DA asked the question in council. And in response to their question, the executive then developed a policy framework which they brought into council, which policy framework now has been found to have been inconsistent with the Constitution, so that the courts have now helped us to interpret it correctly. Remember, once there's a dispute of interpretation of the law, the best place to find an interpretation is the courts. And the courts have said, our policy is inconsistent. And these are the following things you need to do to correct this environment. And that's exactly what we are doing. And by the 14th of February, we would have completed the work that needs to be done, and we'll then submit and ensure that we comply with the law. We comply with the Constitution and the ministerial handbook.
May I want to take you back to that statement where you emphasized that this was a program started, or it was an initiative brought by the Democratic Alliance. Of course, we hold no one's brief here. But in their absence, there'd still be those at home that argue that it's but one thing to propose that let there be an extension where you've got MECO members that might actually have their lives being threatened, might actually need that protection, that let's extend it, and then if there's merit, once there's a justification, that can be offered. So one would say, but you were then entrusted as the coalition government with putting together the framework, and all that was needed was to then just present the analysis to say, indeed, there's a threat for official X or official Y.
So the application would have been done to SAPS, and it's SAPS that must conduct it and conclude it. You can only make a follow-up. How far are you? Have you concluded or you have not concluded the threat analysis? We did our part, filled in the forms, and ensured the forms go through. We've done it again today. We've asked everybody today to refill the forms. We're taking them back to SAPS. We'll request Commissioner Mtombeni and his team to help us to expedite now that there's a court judgment on the matter, so that we can put the matter to rest. In fact, Fundo, it's not a matter of national interest, if you ask me. There are key pressing matters in Joburg that I think as the mayor we should be focused on and not be distracted by issues of this nature. Whether we've got
community
protection,
members would beg to differ because they were quite concerned, Mayor,
whether we've got
because it comes at a cost.
No. Whether we've got protection services or we don't have, it's neither here nor there. We don't really need it. We can come up tomorrow and say we don't need it and proceed. So we can drive ourselves. We have done it before. We're driving ourselves. MMCs of the ANC throughout since the dawn of democracy or local government, they've been driving themselves. It's only when the DA came into power, this whole thing changed. So we are correcting what the court says we must correct.
But they were saying that here's a proposal. Certain officials might need to be protected, especially in a country such as ours, because we've seen even government officials that have been killed being linked to any political matter. So I think as political parties in council, you would have also wanted to address that element, that if you've got certain politicians that whose lives might be under threat, it would be responsible to actually have them protected.
There are instances where we go to areas where we think are high risk. We normally, before 2016, we ensured that we've got a formula where we would send JMPD officers to ensure they scan the place, they ensure that the environment is protected, whichever government official comes is protected. We still do that even now, where we believe it's a high-risk area. We do send them in to assess, because we've got 7 regions, and every region has a JMPD focused in that region, and they go and do an assessment, a threat analysis, ensure that the officials will be safe. Now, where we are is to comply with what the court says. Comply with this thing, do what the court says we must do, and we must move on. These bigger issues we must be focused on, which impact on service delivery, impacts on how we give provision of water and electricity, traffic lights, roads. Those are the things that we should really be preoccupied, as opposed to me being worried whether I've got protection services or not. And I think that's the views that the council shares. We also have instances where ward councillors are being attacked for whatever reasons. People will protest, go into their houses. We try and make sure we send in JMPD to ensure the safety of our councillors. And in fact, the ward councillors are more in risk than some of us who hardly interact when there's protest. It's minimal, our interaction, as opposed to our ward councillors, especially in the townships who are in the line of fire, as and when there's no electricity or there's no water, people will march to their houses. In fact, we should be focused on a formula and a better system than the one that we are doing now to ensure the safety of our ward councillors, as and when there's protests. Because once people are angry and there's no electricity,
so what would be that better formula?
The first point, we'll have to think and allow our security experts within the city to help us think it through as to how best we can do it. The same way we have to think it through how we are going to ensure that everyone else, when sent into areas which might be of high risk, how do we ensure their safety? And over and above is also how do we participate and contribute as the city and JMPD into the general safety of our residents, which is a point of concern. How do we collaborate with the SAPS to ensure the safety of our citizens against crime, against lawlessness, and against vandalism? And those are the key issues. We'd move on by the 14th of February, would have had a solution as to how we are going to better approach the threat analysis, would have the report, and we'll make the decisions that must be made.
All right. Mayor, thank you very much for your time this evening. That was Johannesburg Mayor Dada Morero indicating there that they will not be appealing the ruling that found that the allocation of a high number of bodyguards was unconstitutional. More interviews after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has asked a New York court to throw out his conviction on charges stemming from the hush money paid to a porn star and to dismiss the case before his scheduled Friday sentencing. The request to a state appeals court marked a last-ditch effort by Trump to block a lower court ruling on Monday to proceed with the sentencing on Friday, and this is 10 days before Trump's inauguration. SABC News correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Peace joins me in studio this time around to unpack this and other international stories. Happy New Year, Sherwin, and it's so nice to have you in studio.
Good to see you, Mfundo. Thanks for having me.
No, it's wonderful to have you with us back in South Africa. Quite a lot happening in America. 10 days before the inauguration, I mean, we were just monitoring, even with Joe Biden, quite a very busy man on the last few days. We were reporting on him now looking, or there was a proposal that Congress now was considering a lot of money, billions, that will go into arms for Israel. We've also got a situation now where we've got Elon Musk rubbing Keir Starmer up the wrong way.
Right.
Quite a lot has been happening. Let's start with just Trump's issues with the hush money.
So Donald Trump will be sentenced because he has been convicted of 34 felony counts of business fraud as it relates to how that payment was documented by the Trump administration. You'll recall $130,000 payment was made to Stormy Daniels in 2016 by then Trump lawyer Michael Cohen. Trump was subsequently convicted in a Manhattan courtroom in May last year. The judge has deferred his sentencing given the outcome of the election, but has now made a decision, Mfundo, that he will go ahead with the sentencing, right, your guilt, and pronounce himself on that guilt, but has also indicated that Donald Trump will not be incarcerated because based on Justice Department rules, you cannot you cannot incarcerate a sitting president, Donald Trump in this instance, the president-elect. That's one issue. The other issue that we're hearing out of Palm Beach, Florida, from his Mar-a-Lago estate today is that Donald Trump is saying that he is not prepared to rule out the use of military force to reclaim American authority over the Panama Canal and Greenland, citing US national security concerns. Greenland is the territory of Denmark. Denmark is a NATO member state. The United States is a NATO member state. Donald Trump has also just said that he will use economic pressure to make Canada the 51st state of the United States. So this is the scenario we are now entering into in 2025. Donald Trump is not yet president, but he is indicating, as he did in 2016, the chaos one might expect, particularly given our role as journalists that have to monitor these things, the chaos. Is he serious about making Canada the 51st state? Is he serious about undermining the sovereignty of a NATO member state? These are the issues that we are going to have to grapple with, given the uncertainty that has come to epitomize Donald Trump's period in the White House in 2016, and one imagines that it'll be more of the same this time around.
The question of whether he's serious, it seems that the Prime Minister of Canada thought he is serious, because now, if you look at what happened with Justin Trudeau, I mean, this matter has clearly become serious. You have him resigning, and many are saying this is against the backdrop of that specific threat of tariffs. You're going to see tariff increases, but beyond that, that specific threat of the 51st state.
The United States president, as much as it might seem that Donald Trump has grand authority here, right? They tweet, they talk about what they see the future of America being. The question is, will the United States Senate, will the United States Congress concur? Each member of the United States Senate and each member of the US Congress is elected by their constituencies. So they get their mandate from their electors. And so they have a great deal of leverage, a great deal of independence. Will there be pushback from Congress? There are three tiers of the US government, right? There's the White House, which is the executive. You then have the Senate and Congress. And Congress has a role to play here. Democrats certainly have an oppositional role to play here. So one wonders if this is just noise in the vein of Donald Trump, or whether there's any seriousness to this. Canada is a G7 state. How will the G7 react? If they do it to Canada, what's next? Right? Elon Musk isn't only talking about Keir Starmer, he's also undermining Olaf Scholz in the German election. France's Emmanuel Macron has talked about this. European leaders are reacting to this. The Prime Minister of Norway has also repudiated the efforts that you are seeing from the megalomaniac Elon Musk, that Democrats have now called President Musk, seeking to irritate Donald Trump, seeking a reaction from him. What does that relationship look like going forward? What will the power of an independent businessman that works outside of the government, right, advising Trump through this Department of Government Efficiency, what power will Elon Musk really have? Congress has the power of the purse in the United States, not an outside advisor. So there are legal elements here that need to come into the fore, beyond what you see on Twitter today.
But most certainly has left the world very anxious. But yesterday, there was a very important event that took place. This was the confirmation of Donald Trump's victory. And this is something, as per the Constitution, that is undertaken by the Deputy President.
Right.
So you had yesterday Kamala Harris going on to confirm the victory of Donald Trump. She lost to Trump. And many now looked at this confirmation and compared it to what we saw when it was Biden's victory, where you had that had to be confirmed, where you had now those that were Trump supporters saying, absolutely not, there will be no confirmation, and then what we saw happen after that at Capitol Hill.
Nancy Pelosi was the speaker. Mike Pence was the vice president. He had a role to officiate, right? The vice president doesn't certify. They officiate on the certification that is done by members of Congress. And so you saw a sea change from what happened when Donald Trump supporters invaded the United States Congress on January 6, 2021. And the Democrats demonstrating what a peaceful transfer of power looks like. Kamala Harris, what a difficult moment for her, having lost this election. She got 75 million votes. Donald Trump got 77 million. She lost by 2 million. It was a close election. America's still very divided, but she showed up. She did her job. And kudos to Democrats for demonstrating what America's about in that sense.
No, indeed. Sherwin, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. There's quite a lot to discuss. That is correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Peace there, speaking to us, giving us the very latest on the international front. And that's where we leave it for this evening. Enjoy your evening further. Good night.